individually. We've got 2 speakers today, so we're going to do some expediting of our introductions. So if you are on the board of directors for the Pearland Chamber, if you would please stand up.
One more.
And our staff, they're mingling around and walking around the room. I think most of them are standing over there. And if you are an ambassador, please stand up. And then I'm going to go through the list of dignitaries, and for your convenience, I'm not going to ask you to stand up, but and also to hold your applause until I've gone through all the names. But as I call your name, if you'll at least just wave your hand so people can see where you're sitting if they need to come track you down after the luncheon. First up, I think we have Alex Chadwell with Congressman Nell's office. We have in the General Land Office, Melissa Washington. We have, of course, District 11 State Senator Larry Taylor with us today. We have Randy Groff with State Representative Ed Thompson. We have Don McDonald with Representative Dennis Paul. We have Missouri County Commissioner Stacey Adams, Precinct 3. I'll allow some whoops. We have Missouri County Justice of the Peace, Roy Castillo, Precinct 3, Place 2. We have from the Pearland Economic Development Alliance of Brazoria County, Gary Bassinger, President CEO. I don't see a hand going up. City of Pearland, of course, Mayor Kevin Cole. City Council members Trent Perez, Tony Carbone, Alex Kemcar, Luke Orlando, and Woody Owens. Assistant City Manager Ron Frazier. Pearland Economic Development Corporation Board members Chad Thurman, Secretary. City of Manville Mayor Deborah Davidson. City of Manville Council members Dan Davis and Lorraine Payne. Yes. I thought I remembered that correctly, thank you. Representing the University of Houston Clear Lake Pearland campus, Dr. Beth Lewis. President of Alvin Community College, Dr. Robert Exley. Alvin Community College Board of Regents, Belle Sanchez, Chair. And Judy Dragey, Vice Chair. Jake Starkey and Darren Sheldon. The table back there. Pearland ISD Board of Trustees, Dr. Chris Scheffler. And yes, we've got Dr. Kelly, I believe I saw was here.
All right.
And Alvin ISD Superintendent Carol Nelson. Deputy Superintendent of Academics Jennifer Valdez, and Associate Superintendent Daniel Combs. From the Pearland Chamber officers, I've already introduced them, so we will go on back with our staff. I'm going to call Jim Johnson. No, actually, got to get back to my agenda. Excuse me, I've got through the list. At this time, I'm going to ask Letty Lair to come up and introduce our first-time members and new members, first-time attendees.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to be recognizing all the new members for the month of July. And if you're here, you could please stand. A Shoe Chic Boutique, Haven Adult Daycare and Transportation. Yes, thank you. Just Beyond the Runway, Natural Green Leaf Pharmacy, Spicy Buddy Den and Grill, Daymed Pharmacy, I think they were here. The RE Source, Kimley Horn, Cole's Flea Market, Victor's Control and Automation Group, SkyTech Aerial, Primer Healthcare for Women. The Garth represents Pearland Jazz, Pearland Sign Company, Jersey Mike's South. Thank you. Thank you to all our new members. If this is your first time attending the luncheon, can you please stand? If this is the first time that you attend the luncheon with us, please stand. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Ms. Ann.
Thank you, Betty. Again, welcome all of you here today. We're excited to have our speakers here, to have two of them here. And our first speaker I'd like to welcome is Senator Larry Taylor, Friendswood born and bred, I believe, and a native Texan. And without further ado, and to give him and our next speaker much time as they need, within our limits, of course, is ask Larry Taylor to please come up. Senator Taylor.
Well, good afternoon. It's great to see you. It's nice to be here. In fact, this is my first week I've been home this summer, and it's been quite a pleasure. And I'm sorry, I know you're up there in Austin, but I've heard there may be a quorum today, so we may be able to finish this and be done. On the Senate side, we've had a quorum, so we've been able to keep moving and pass the bills that were on the governor's call, and then we were able to come home. Unfortunately, the House members have to stay there waiting for the call in the House, so we'll be hearing from Ed here shortly. You got to start my watch, sorry. Jim, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome back. It's good to see you here. I'm going to do a wrap-up of the session. This is actually the first wrap-up of the 87th session I've done, which is really weird because normally we wait about 3 weeks or so for everything to settle out. Well, unfortunately, we went right into special session and we never really had that opportunity. We've been there twice since then. So this is my first legislative wrap-up. This is my first rehearsal. So I hope y'all, okay, can I turn that just a little bit?
Yes, sir.
Because Dr. Kelly's looking over my shoulder. Don't worry, I'm talking about education. We got that in there. Anyway, it's a strange session. If you'll remember, when we started in January of 21 with all the COVID protocols, normally the Capitol is just a bustling place filled with people, and it was not. And there was a testing tent out the back of the Capitol that if you're going to go into a hearing room in the Senate or the chamber, you had to get tested with a quick test, not the brain scrape. You wouldn't do that to people. That would call that torture. And we've probably all been voted out of office. But very strange. And then, of course, y'all remember February with the freeze. I say this all the time. Every session is different. Every session has its own personality. There's different players, different issues. There's always some issue that drops in out of the blue that no one expected. Well, this year it dropped in from the North Pole and froze us. I mean, it's terrible. Absolutely disaster. So that ended up taking up a lot of the session's energy, was trying to figure out what will happen and what can we do to fix that as quickly as possible. And I'll be talking about that here in just a little bit. On the business side, for you business folks, I personally was working on a commercial vehicle litigation reform bill. I don't know if you've noticed TV, every other ad is a lawyer for wanting to sue somebody's truck. Or the billboards, I mean, you go to sometimes it's every billboard. That's usually a sign there's something going on. Well, yes, there was. In fact, it was getting harder and harder for people to get commercial vehicle insurance, and those that could were paying ridiculous prices, so the smaller people were actually falling out of it. And what had happened was they were just going in there and just making hay. So what we did, kind of like we do in the criminal system, they were using like anything that had ever happened in the last 10 or more years of that company and saying, see, all that happened, that's why this accident happened. They weren't even starting with, did they even cause the accident? In fact, they weren't even allowing, some of these trucks have video cameras on them. A lot of these courthouses weren't allowed to show the video in the courtroom. So we had to go through and fix all that, allow that kind of evidence, and also have a bifurcated trial. Basically, you determine who caused the accident first, and then you talk about exemplary damages. You don't throw exemplary on top of who caused the accident. So just simplify that. Hope you'll see fewer ads and fewer billboards in the very near future. The bill takes effect September 1st, so the ads are still running. I'm sure they're trying to fill their cases while they can. On the education side, as you may know, I'm the chairman of the Education Senate side on the Committee on Education, and there was a lot of question during the interim, particularly. We passed House Bill 3 during the 86th session. Huge bill, $11.5 billion going to public education, lowering your taxes, all these things. But people are wondering, is this legislature going to really stand by those commitments? Are they going to be able to fulfill those funding commitments that we made? And I can tell you about July of last year, it didn't look good. Y'all know what happened with COVID, right? Economy shut down, sales taxes were down, everything was down. Traffic was down, which is kind of nice for a while. But I'd rather have the traffic with all the dollars and the jobs that go with it personally. So anyway, when we got our numbers in July for the comptroller, we have a balanced budget amendment, right, in the Texas legislature. We can only spend what we have. Don't wish they do that in some other places. But anyway, so he gives us the budget revenue estimate, and that's how much we have to spend. Well, in July, we had a budget shortfall. By the end of the summer, though, before we came in, right before session, we got a revised budget estimate, and the economy had improved. Y'all had gotten back out, and our economy was back, and we were able to fulfill those funding requirements, commitments. And I'm happy to say we did that. Along the way, we also had to do a cleanup bill on House Bill 3. Anytime you do a over 300-page, that complex of a bill dealing with school finance, you're going to have some unintended consequences. So we went through and cleaned up some of that. And we also threw some more money in there, about $3 billion. Some of that's federal funds, some of that's state funds, to try to help combat learning loss. You've all heard about the learning losses going on in schools. Even the schools that were face-to-face, they'll miss several months. But then we had a lot of schools that were just face-to-face, and we all know what happened there. These programs were stood up overnight, and I commend our educators for doing everything they could, but you don't stand up a program like that overnight. And we had people say, well, virtual education doesn't work. Well, I have to tell you, it's like comparing a MASH unit on the battlefield to a hospital. Of course, the MASH unit is not as good as a hospital, but it was stood up overnight. It was triage. But now we have the opportunity to develop better programs. We've learned a lot. There's a lot of good things we've learned from COVID that we can continue to use, not to replace face-to-face, but as an enhancement for all of our students. But there are some students, a small percentage, who actually did better in the virtual environment. I know that's kind of surprising, but some kids, due to emotional, behavioral issues, actually did better in that environment where they were more focused and were able to. There's one story, and this is not normal, but we had a 12-year-old girl in Texas, took advantage of the COVID. She graduated high school and got a 2-year associate's degree during COVID. Okay, that kind of tells you what's out there. Not every student's doing that, but those are the things we can learn from. And what would that 12-year-old kid be doing in an 8th grade class today? Bored to tears. Versus let them go. If she's got some kind of online entrepreneur thing, she's marketing something, more power to her. That's awesome. Those are the things we learn, and we want to help keep moving that forward. By the way, the feds, I talked about $11.5 billion we did last time. We did that again, plus some more this time. The feds are sending $16 billion directly to our local schools to help with this catch-up. And that's a lot of money. The problem is they have to spend that within like 2 to 3 years, and I'm concerned about how the money gets spent. I want the money spent on students, not programs, not building this and all that. And there's some limitations, but there's a lot of, we have a really good district here. Our area has really good districts. There's some of them that aren't that good. And they have a lot of financial issues that go on in those districts. And I'm really concerned about how that money gets spent when we've got real needs with our students. And we did some things working on getting our kids caught up. Setting up a program to help statewide for tutoring. We've got kids that are way behind, right? It's now been over like a year. They're months behind. Tutoring, we've got retired teachers. Texas retired teachers have volunteered to come back and help tutor these kids. Who would be better to tutor these kids than people who are retired from 20, 30 years of teaching? We've also passed a law that we will not penalize them on their retirement for doing so. This is a time for all hands on deck. So we've helped to deal, we've organized a deal with the state to help organize this program, and we've got the retired teachers as well as others. If they're willing to come back and help our kids get caught up, we have programs and there's funding to help do that. We also spent money at $350 million reimbursing our local schools on some of the technology. Of course, we'd already paid for some of that early on. This was further reimbursement on what we'd all done. Today, in Texas, we have one-to-one devices for every kid. Every student has a device. That is worlds away from where we were before this. We had schools that didn't have any technology. I mean, they had to run the school, obviously, but nothing for the kids. So you can imagine how hard it was for them to start up when we went virtual. Some of them had been doing virtual, and it wasn't that big a deal. But we all have it now, and so that now we have to train our teachers in how to use those devices. It's not just an electronic textbook. It has so much more. It has so much value they can provide to kids and help them self-pace as well as more enrichment in their education. We also did something to reform the permanent school fund, which is a huge investment that we're very blessed to have in Texas. Land, the General Land Office, the School Board, State Board of Education has been jointly operating this. Well, it wasn't very efficient to do it that way. So we combine the two, they're now working together. It's going to add about $100 million a year to our school funding, just from efficiencies in our investing in that. Real quick, we also did Hold Harmless. As you know, a lot of our schools, enrollment was down. We did Hold Harmless through the end of the year. We funded that during this session to make sure they were made whole from that. And then the other thing, now this is an issue that we found out at the very beginning of session, and this is really alarming. We passed a bill on accelerated learning, but here's why. Before COVID, about 22% of our students every year grade below grade level. 22%. 2 to 3 years later, 4% have caught up. Does that sound good? That was shocking to us. That's before COVID. Now we got COVID with huge amounts. We have to do something different than what we've been doing. Once again, we have schools that do a good job of that. We have some, obviously the numbers reflect, that aren't doing a good job. So now, you know, if you have a special needs child, they actually set up a committee and they get together and work together on how we're going to help this child succeed. Now, when a child falls below grade level, they're going to set up a committee for that child. How are we going to get this child caught up? Not 4% of them get caught up. There's requirements in there for education, good teachers, supplemental tutoring, those types of things. Once again, the money is coming in right now, particularly in the federal government, to help get this done. So we're not asking to do something there's no money for it. I will say the federal money that's coming, I need to clarify this, it's coming in based on the number of Title I students you have. Title I is your low-income kids who qualify for free and reduced lunch. So if you're a school that doesn't have a lot of low-income students, you're not getting much money. So the state did actually offer a supplement to those schools to help them get caught up with some of their COVID, as well as some of their catch-up needs they need as well. We've actually heard complaining on that, on the accelerated learning portion of the program, you know, that we're asking too much, but I'm sorry, the status quo is not acceptable. We cannot continue doing the same thing we've been doing and expect something to do. We need to shake the whole box up. Hey, wake up, this is not acceptable. Because those kids that fall behind at those levels, guess what? They never catch up. And guess what? They end up dropping out. Who knows what? I mean, we've got to get these kids caught up. The whole point of House Bill 3 was closing the gaps. And now COVID has come in and made these gaps bigger, and we've also had revealed some of the other gaps we didn't even know about. So we're going to continue work on that. One of the bills we did pass is a virtual education commission. If you remember, I was on a school finance commission before we did the school finance bill, House Bill 3, year-long process. But the virtual education commission is going to help the state develop what were the best practices, what really worked well, what didn't work, and try to help direct all of our campuses where they can use this in the future. Remember, we are in the 21st century. So the use of technology and online should not be foreign to our students. We don't want it for all of our students all day long. It doesn't work. About probably 95% of our kids do terribly in that environment. But we'll also, that was also, I'll say, that was a thing that was stood up overnight. It was a mass shooting. So I think we can improve that on the number of students, but still, I think it's a great enhancement. Kid gets sick, mono, they're out for 2 weeks. They don't have to fall behind. Kid gets alternative discipline. And we hear this all the time, they're taken out of their class and they fall behind, they never catch up. They're disrupting the whole class, I get it, but now they can actually keep up and not fall behind while they're learning their lesson and why they need to learn how to act better and behave better. I was probably one of those students. No, what? I was never, how'd that get out? I'm sorry. Another thing for our community colleges, we set up a community college finance commission. Once again, just like we did for House Bill 3, prior to House Bill 3, community college funding has gotten complicated. There's 50 in the whole state, 50 community colleges, and it's gotten complicated. So it's time to modernize that, look at how we're doing it, make sure we're fitting with where it really works and what works best for the community college. And I want to say this about our community colleges. They are going to be our best way of getting caught back up for our older kids and adults. As this market is changing and things are working virtually, we got a lot of people who need upskills, and this is the most efficient and effective way to do that with our community college. So I commend the folks that are here from our community college. We just want to make sure we give you enough money to get that job done. How about time reduction? I still got time. This is awesome. Another thing we passed, and you know, y'all all heard about the human trafficking issue and all that. We passed a bill called the No Trafficking Zone. You know, you drive through school and it says don't use your cell phone, and here we go again. it's going to have that. It's going to have signs posted. And you go, why do we need that around our schools? Well, they did a survey of trafficking victims. And this is going to shock you. 55% of those victims said they were trafficked while they were in school. Someone would actually leave campus during the day and be brought back. So now we posted signs, we're increasing penalties drastically. This is a big warning. This is a no trafficking zone. If you're doing it here and we catch you, you're going to jail for a long time. We're not putting up with that with our students. So that's something we got done. I'm almost there. Uri. So many names, winter apocalypse, snow, I don't remember all the names. What did we do? Well, this system we had was done like in '98. I'm sorry, before that, in the late '80s. ERCOT, all that. And I'm telling you, we found a lot of problems, unfortunately. You find things when systems are stressed is when you find your problems, right? And this was a stressful time. That polar vortex coming down here, not just coming, but staying and staying and staying. Really tax our system. Now, you have to realize most of our electrical generation are built for heat. So they're outside. You know, up in the northeast, they put them inside because they're dealing with cold. We don't do that here because you'd have them overheating all summer. So obviously there's some things that have to change. But we've changed the board makeup of ERCOT because they had gotten sloppy, not doing their jobs. We changed the board out. No longer has a majority of industry people on the board. Some things that, wow, that makes sense. Supply chain security. Some of you probably know this, but part of the problem we were having with when the grid was going down, we have what they're called the ones that have to be on your hospitals, police stations. Criticals, thank you. We had some of our suppliers of gas that had not done a one-page form to turn and say, hey, we're critical. So guess what was happening? When they got the order for the electricity provider to say reduce your load, they were cutting off the people who were providing the gas, who provided the load. See the death spiral? You turn off the gas provider who's providing you the gas and like wonder why the power went off. Those things should not happen. So we've got a group that's working just on that, supply chain, to make sure those things are done. Yes, there's things being done to winterize and all that. Those are simpler to think through, but they take a little while to get done. I will say this, we were out of session maybe 2 weeks, and we got that thing that said conserve. First of all, conserve is not a terrible thing. We've had those for years. We have them with water. It just says conserve. It wasn't like the power was going off. But first of all, Bill, they didn't do anything. It was 2 weeks after session. When you want us to go out there and do it ourselves? I mean, I'm only getting $600 a month. I'm not working these plants. Anyway, I feel confident. The governor, I was just with the governor last week before COVID, sorry. Maybe it was a week and a half.
14 days.
And he feels very confident. I mean, he feels extremely confident we are prepared. Just by some of the things I've already discussed with you today, that we're not going to have that happen again here in Texas. And we certainly will not allow that. So meanwhile, why am I here and why is Ed not? Special session. So we had that very end of session, a group of people left because they didn't like a bill that was coming out, the election integrity bill, which broke quorum. And unfortunately, I had one bill behind that. And that was the one to fund virtual education for our schools that are continuing those programs. So that bill is still in limbo. We have some schools that are doing it on their own using fund balances. That's not really a good way to run a program like that for the long haul. Once again, this is for a small percentage of students, and it's 10% is in our bill. The commissioner can make a waiver if there's a healthcare crisis, like what we're seeing right now or something like that. But we want to make sure we're not funding and continuing these bad programs. I don't want to be responsible for supporting and continuing everybody being in a virtual classroom who does not need to be there. So we've got limitations. That's on the call. We've already passed in the Senate this special session. So it's ready. When the House comes back, we get that done. Bail reform. You've heard about the issues, particularly in Harris County. Harris County is like the best example, the best bad example right now of what's going on with bail reform. We all want people to not be mistreated if they're low income. But at the same time, if a rich person murders somebody and a poor person murders somebody, they should not be treated unequally. We should not let you out just because you can't afford bail. And we've had stories now 4 and 5, 6, 7 times out on bail for violent offenses, they finally kill somebody again. That can't stand either. And unfortunately, Harris County's been kind of the center of that, but it can spread. So we're trying to be ahead of that, proactive. We also, since session, the comptroller came out with another budget revenue estimate. So we now have more money than we knew we had during session. Remember, this is an estimate, but we can spend it on his estimate. So our retired teachers have not had a pay raise in like, I don't know how many years. We've given them a 13 check, and then we had extra money, like an extra pay check for a 13 check. So we have the ability to do that now, and we're trying to do that. That's been on the special call. We've already passed in the Senate, waiting for the House to get their quorum, so they get a 13 check to our retired teachers. We owe it to them. They did this for our kids. They worked a long time, and we can't give them a raise. We're not there yet. We've got their account actuarially sound, which it wasn't, which you legally can't even give a pay raise for it's not actual. But we're right there on the edge of getting it where it's solid footing where we can afford to do that. Property tax relief. In House Bill 3, we reduced property taxes for all of you. Remember, we put in extra money, reduced your tax rate? Guess who didn't get it? People over 65 and totally disabled. People did not get it. There was an issue that it had to be on a separate constitutional amendment. We've got that in there now. We had the money once again, because that costs money to pay that. So we had that on the bill. So if we get a quorum again, these are the kind of things we can pass and get done. When that happens, like I say, I heard maybe today, Ed, maybe you could shed some light on this. There's a good chance at 4 o'clock they might have a quorum. Anyway, we do have another special session coming. And can I just say special sessions to a list, they really aren't all that special. And to have an extra special session is really not special. But we're going to go back in September, mid-September. We have another one already scheduled for redistricting, because we didn't get our numbers from the Census Bureau until way late. So now we're back in the fall. We know we're going to be there for redistricting. That has to be done every decade after the census. So we'll be back. But in the meantime, I'm not complaining. I asked for this job. I have found nothing more worthwhile to do with my life than what I'm doing with this, and take care of kids and help them with the state. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do that. And with that, I'll turn over to State Representative Ed Thompson. Thank you very much.
All right, Jim Johnson, President and CEO. I'm going to introduce Rep. Ed Thompson. If you notice in your program, we put Ed Thompson's office. We wanted to put that in quotations because we did not know if we were going to get him virtually, or if we were going to get him in person, or if we were going to get one of his wonderful staff like Brandy to speak on his behalf. So State Representative Ed Thompson has served our Pearland community as Chairman of the Board for the Chamber, Board of Trustees for Pearland ISD, Pearland City Council, and now our State Rep for District 29. Representative Thompson, we can see you good. Hopefully you can talk and we'll hear you back on that end. So.
On mute. How many times do you have to say that on Zoom?
Shut up, your mic.
Hold on, Ed. Can he see us?
Hold on, Ed. We're working on the audio.
Can he see us?
Wait.
He can't see us.
Is he on? Wait one
He can see
second,
us
Ed.
from the computer.
Wait, live.
Yeah, he can see us.
Is that recording?
Yes.
This is fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
I heard him. I heard a voice.
There we go. There's a delay.
Thank you. Well, it's great to be with you virtually. I wish I could be in person. We're actually, as Senator Taylor said, we're in our second special session, and this, to be honest with you, there's nothing special about this. It has really been one of a little bit of despair on everyone's part. The fact that we're without a quorum. Most of you know a group of legislators left the state, went to Washington, D.C. in the first legislative session, and broke quorum. As you know, we have to have 100 members here in order to have quorum, have 2/3 of present, and that has not been achieved yet. We're hoping today we were hoping yesterday that there would be some folks that would come back, and for whatever reason that didn't happen. So we're hoping today we will have that number. We reached the number of 95, and at that time there was a special call put on the House. One of the representatives made a motion that the special call be placed, and at that point, Speaker Phelan issued a civil arrest warrant for 52 members of the House for them to be brought back to the House. That hasn't happened yet, so we're in the process of trying to get that. Each and every day we receive it's a hall pass. We get this every day from the dais, and we're required to come back the next day. And so that's the reason I'm here and not there. I feel like it's my duty to be here, even though we're not really getting things done like I had hoped we would. This, as Senator Taylor said, this has been a really different session than anything I've ever experienced before. I laughed the other day and said we started out with COVID, then Winter Storm Uri. There was a hailstorm here in Austin. There was a rainstorm that actually flooded the extension of the Capitol the other day. So now I'm waiting for the plague of frogs to happen. That's I think the next thing is on the agenda here. So it's really been a very, very strange session with the specials and the lack of quorum. We were called back immediately after the first session by the governor. So we really didn't get a chance to get a break. We were actually called back the very next day, and that's sort of where we're at right now. It's kind of been one of those things where, again, I think Senator Taylor kind of touched a little bit on redistricting. That's a major concern to a lot of us, so whether or not how that will take place. If you don't achieve quorum, that could really complicate that even more stuff. So we're hoping to get that so we can complete that. As many of you know, we will have 2 additional congressional seats that we'll have to draw, as well as our state representative districts and the state senate districts will be, will probably redrawn to some extent. We're not sure exactly what that's going to look like. Some preliminary numbers or the numbers have come out. We just haven't seen those in a form that really gives us a lot of idea about how that will take place. So that probably will occur. My understanding is probably around September 1, and so we will have an opportunity, hopefully, to be back here to do that. My prayer is that I'm not on the floor of the House when they put up the Christmas tree. Really hoping that we can get this done. I think it's unproductive for us to be doing what we're doing right now because citizens of Texas expect and deserve more than what we're being able to deliver. And the Senate has not had their quorum broke, so they have been able to go ahead and do business, and have done a great job of hearing the bills and having it set up and ready to go. So hopefully we can complete that. That's kind of a wrap up of the special session. But I did want to kind of cover a couple of things that we were able to get done. Many of you know I was appointed to be on the Appropriations Committee, and I served on the subcommittee for Articles 6, 7, 8, as well as also Strategic Fiscal Review and Federal Relief Fund subcommittee that we haven't actually met that committee yet. There are additional federal funds that are coming in, and so I'm assuming that this subcommittee will have an opportunity to have some voice in that. But a couple of things that we got done on appropriations that I was excited about was we got some funding for an all-inclusive park. One that will provide for an opportunity for
children with disabilities to be able to go out to a park and to be able to enjoy that. Something that we work with Texas Parks and Wildlife, this grant. So that money will be there for that all-inclusive park. And then we also were able to secure a grant for through TDM, which is the Texas Department of Emergency Management, for a emergency center in Brazoria County. There'll be a $5 million grant that will provide for part of that funding for that as well. So a couple of exciting things, I think, that are really great for our district, for our county. We're still working on some of the transportation issues. Many of you might have seen information about I-45 North. It's kind of stalled right now, and we're working with the Texas TxDOT commissioners about they're wanting to take this out of the UTP, and we're trying to keep it in there. And I know a lot of you probably say, well, I-45 North really doesn't have anything to do with this area, but it really does. It's a huge part of the transportation of goods and services into our area, as well as an evacuation route that is necessary and one that is very important to our region as well. So we're still working with the commissioners on that, as well as on segment B of the Grand Parkway, which is basically it's a connector between I-45 and the portion that we're working on from I-45 over to 1462 in Alvin. That's part of a project that we've been discussing with TxDOT and trying to work on that. So we're continuing to do that as well. So even though we're not able to move legislation, we're still working up here and still meeting with agencies, trying to get things done that are beneficial to House District 29. We'll continue to do that as we move along. Hopefully today at 4 o'clock, when we go on the floor, we'll have a forum and we'll be able to begin the process of taking care of the 17 items that Governor has on the call. Thank y'all again for having me this way. I wish I could have been there. I really thought about driving down there this morning and turning around and driving back and trying to be back here by 4 o'clock, but I thought, well, I don't know if I could make that. I didn't want to end up in Bastrop at 4 o'clock and somebody pull me over and throw me in the back of a patrol car. I try to do it this way. So thank y'all again for allowing me to do it virtually, and I hope that if you have any questions or anything that we can do, you'll reach out to Brandy, their district office, and then Molly here at Capitol office. We're willing and able to help anywhere we can for serving you, and appreciate the opportunity to serve here. Thank you.
Awesome.
Ed, can you hear me? Ed, can you hear me?
Yes, I
cool,
can.
That works out great. So here's the Ed, if you have a moment, Representative Thompson, Representative Taylor, if we have time for a couple questions from the audience, if that's okay. If you have a question, I'm going to probably repeat it just from a very loud voice. This is technology making it work. So does anybody have a question for Senator Taylor or Representative Thompson? You raise your hand. Wow. That means, oh, yes, sir, right there.
Senator, it's the perennial question. The Ike Dyke.
Oh. I cannot believe I didn't.
And I can't give you the microphone because then we can't hear Ed.
I can talk loud enough.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me? Yes. I can't believe I let that out. The coastal barrier protecting us from storm surge, from hurricanes. We passed a bill. The required bill, we had to have a local sponsor to work with the federal government, the Army Corps of Engineers, to move that project forward. I was just at the first meeting of the board of the Gulf Coast Protection District yesterday. Thank you for bringing up. Why is that not on my list of highlights? Oh my gosh, this is something that's going to change the history of Texas. You know, we're in a great place. Texas is on the water. Every great society throughout world history is on the water because commerce.
Right.
But with that water comes some problems every now and then, right? But we got to deal with the problem. And now we have a way to deal with it. We're going to build a coastal barrier to keep the storm surge in the Gulf and protect us from that devastation that can happen to our chemical plants, our jobs, our homes, our families, loss of life. But that thing is going forward. The Army Corps is coming out with a preferred plan. Should be, I think, September. And then we go to DC and sell this plan. And we want to direct appropriate. They're all talking about infrastructure. You can't beat this infrastructure. Think of the seawall in Galveston. Has been there since the 1900 storm. They built about 1905. It's still there today, doing its job in protecting Galveston Island. A lot of cities didn't come back after storms. Alaska, right? There's places that are gone. They didn't rebuild. In today's global economy, if we were to get hit by a major event and wipe that complex out, I'm not sure they would rebuild here with this when they go all these other places. So this is important for the future of Texas to have that. And it's not just our region, it's not just our state. This affects the whole nation. The military aviation fuel we produce there, the auto fuel we produce there, all the other things we produce here, the feedstock we get from other places in the country and the things we send to other states. We have a lot of people in other states helping push for this project. So thank you for bringing that up. I can't believe I left that. It's a very important bill. Probably it's one of those legacy things that they'll never know who did it, but 80 years from now, they're going to be so glad we did it. Thank you. Thank you for getting a good presentation.
I just want to thank you for your leadership on this. You've been a champion for it from the very beginning. We all appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much.
Your first legislative update. Now you know what the next notes that add to the notes.
This is rehearsal.
We had to do the rehearsal. So
I'm just practicing. Sorry. Just like we do in special session, we pass the same bills for the third, fourth, and fifth time. Because some of them had to pass twice during regular. The Senate will pass a bill. Sometimes the House will send their bill back instead of the Senate bill, and we pass it again. And then you go into special, so we've had a lot of practice here lately. It's better.
I have a quick question.
Yes,
so
sir,
you're talking about
Sasha.
infrastructure. Is there a place for alternative power as well, like solar and wind? How's that being talked?
Oh, Texas is one of the leaders in renewable energy, but there are some changes that need to be made.
Right.
What happens with renewable energy? We need some base stock, right? We need some plants that are running all the time because y'all know. At night the sun goes down. I know science stuff. At night the sun goes down, and sometimes in some parts of the state, when the peak power is needed, the wind dies.
Right.
So you've got to have that base load, which is generally thermal energy. Well, the problem is we haven't built a lot of thermal energy. We built a lot of renewables because it's hard to build a thermal generating plant at the cost when you're competing with free. Because once the renewables are up there, it doesn't cost anything to run their plant. The wind's blowing, you don't pay for the wind. If the sun's out, you don't pay for the sun. So you've got an unfair competitive thing. So and what happens is the thermal guys, they'll commit to provide power, and if they don't, they got to pay for it. The renewables aren't doing that right now. So you see, they almost have no cost in the market, and they've gotten federal tax breaks to build these things. So you're competing with expensive and almost free. So the idea is they're going to do a day ahead pricing. So renewable says, I'm going to provide this much power, okay, but if you don't, you're going to help pay for some of this other stuff provided. Which it doesn't bring it all the way up here, but it helps level the field a little bit. So we have some more incentive for people to build power plants. That's one of the things that's been, and I didn't really want to get too deep in all that, but we're one of the largest states in renewables. Everybody talks about Texas being an energy producer. All kind of energy comes right here out of the state. One of the leading states on that. We spend a lot of state money getting those transmission lines from West Texas windmills all the way to here. So we've done a lot of that, but we have to have some way to level that thing back out so our grid works all the time. Good question.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Taylor. Thank you, Representative Thompson.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, I'm gonna press the button. I think it's gonna, I pressed it. It's okay, I can talk loud. Anyways, let's see, we can finish up. All right, perfect. I have chamber announcements. I have 2 plaque presentations. In your program is our platinum, gold, and silver members. Today I have 2 people that I just want to call up to present to them their silver plaque. First up is welcome back to Pearland, Steve Hill with Integrity Restoration Services. Steve, if you'll come up and we'll deliver your plaque to you. We'll meet him halfway, you know?
There you go.
We'll take a picture afterwards, Steve. All right, we have one more. Curtis Warren with Haven Adult Daycare and Transportation. I see you coming up from my stage right. Stage right. I'm getting good at this. All right. Our August Business of the Month is not here, but we do want to recognize Crowder Funeral Home. They've been a chamber member since 1998. If you haven't visited our YouTube channel, I encourage you to go watch videos. We do a great production where you can learn more about those businesses. Also, our September luncheon will feature U.S. Congressman Tori Nels, District 22. It'll take place at the Hilton Garden Inn. I wanted to share some numbers with you guys. Mayor Cole taught me this number today. 125,828. 125,828. That is the 2020 census number for Pearland, Texas. Our population on that end. So 125,828. And while I was sitting here, I did what a lot of y'all do. I got a notification on my phone. And then I looked at it. I shouldn't have done that. I apologize because I should have been staring at it. And I got an email just now that says Pearland, if you look at populations from 2010 to 2020, is the 8th fastest growing community in the United States of America. 8th fastest growing city, one of like 5 cities in the state of Texas in the top 15. So there's your data point today. You learned a lot of great information. You're seeing my fantastic staff of the chamber around here. Like, what are they putting QR codes on our tables? This is our monthly luncheon survey. You will get an email to you afterwards, but you can also scan that, take our survey. We want your feedback. Information that you give us allows these programs to be more efficient and to be wonderful. Thank you to all of our new members. Thank you to Gulf Crest Country Club. If you received a plaque or was a speaker today, we'd love for you to come out after the event to take a picture. Guys, have a great rest of your August. Have a good one.
All right.